Let's start it.
Okay, I'd like to open up the meeting of the Ramapo Town Board. This is our meeting of Wednesday, June 24th. It's 8 o'clock, and I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilman Ullman. Here. Councilman Deputy Supervisor Withers.
Present.
Councilwoman Charles. Councilman Friedman. Supervisor St. Lawrence.
Here. I'd like to ask Councilman Yitzi Ullman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is a public hearing on the proposed amendment to the town's ethics law, and I'll turn it over to our town attorney, Michael Klein.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor, if you wouldn't mind taking the two hearings out of order, if we could do the second one first, just because Ms. Conklin, I believe, is coming and will make a very brief presentation on the first one, so if we can give her another minute or two.
So we'll go to the 801 proposed local law, best value contracts.
Yes.
And I'll turn it over to our counsel.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce into evidence for purposes of this hearing an affidavit of publication in the Rock County Journal News, an affidavit of posting, and also a text of the law which is before us tonight. The notice of public hearing reads as follows. Notice is hereby given by the Town Board of the Town of Ramapo that pursuant to the provisions of the Town Law of the State of New York, a public hearing will be held at 8:01 p.m. at the Ramapo Town Hall, 237 Route 59, Suffern, New York, 10901, on the 24th day of June 2015, to consider the adoption of a local law entitled, "A Local Law Authorizing the Use of a Best Value Methodology pursuant to Section 103 of the General Municipal Law for purchase contracts as defined in Section 163 of the State Finance Law." Notice is hereby further given that all interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard. We have Mona Montala, Director of Purchasing, to make a brief presentation regarding the proposed local law.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Supervisor and the honorable members of the Town Board. Tonight, I am asking that you pass a local law to be known as the Ramapo Best Value Contract Award Law, which shall be incorporated into our purchasing policy and procedures. For background purposes, on January 27, 2012, the New York State Legislature and the Governor amended General Municipal Law 103, which is our guideline for purchasing. This authorized the award of purchase contracts, including service contracts, on the basis of what is to be called best value. In order to avail ourselves of this amendment, we must pass a local law authorizing the use of best value awards. What will this do for the town and our taxpayers? It'll expedite the procurement process and result in cost savings. Best value is a standard of selecting goods and services which ensure the highest quality at the lowest potential cost while allowing for fairness to all competitors. The federal government, half of the states, and many municipalities have adopted this practice. Taxpayers are not well served when the public procurement process results in low unit costs at the outset, but ultimately engenders cost escalations due to factors such as inferior quality, poor reliability, and difficulty of maintenance. Best value procurement will provide flexibility. However, our local law and purchasing policy will maintain a standard of objective and quantifiable analysis for such purchases. In addition, by adopting this local law, when awarding by best value, consideration may be given to the vendors that have a minority or women-owned certification status. Finally, it will authorize the town to piggyback on contracts from other governments using best value, which include the use of national cooperative contracts such as U.S. Communities and the National Joint Alliance. Over the last few years, the state has eliminated many state contracts, and my research has found that by using national cooperative contracts, the town will save time and money. Therefore, as your Director of Purchasing, I urge that you pass this local law. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, anybody in the public would like to speak on this proposed local law at this public hearing? Raise your hand. Motion to close the public hearing by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. And now on the main motion to adopt the law of the Ramapo Best Value Contracts Award Law. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, Council, now we will go to the other public hearing on the agenda tonight, which is the proposed amendments to the ethics law.
Yeah, so I'd like to begin the hearing this evening by introducing as exhibits for purposes of the hearing the affidavit of publication of tonight's public hearing, which was in the Rockland County Journal News. Also, we have an affidavit of posting, which is another one of our prerequisites for holding a public hearing, and also a text of the amendments which are before us this evening. Next, I'd like to read into the record the notice of public hearing, which reads as follows. Notice is hereby given by the Town Board of the Town of Ramapo that pursuant to the provisions of the Town Law of the State of New York, a public hearing will be held at 8:00 p.m. at the Ramapo Town Hall, 237 Route 59, Suffern, New York, 10901, on the 24th day of June 2015, to consider the adoption of a local law entitled A Local Law Amending Various Sections of the Ethics in Government Law of the Town of Ramapo. Notice is hereby further given that all interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard. We have with us this evening Anita Conklin, a assistant town attorney, who is also the town attorney's representative as rendering assistance to the Ethics Commission, and she will give a brief presentation about what the amendments are about.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Prior to me just giving a brief presentation, I do have a red line copy of the ethics law, and I want to make sure that each of you have a copy of it. I think, is that the red line one?
Yep.
Okay. After meeting with Richard Weinberger, the chairperson of the Ethics Committee, and speaking with Michael Klein, and I know that we had discussed this at a board meeting prior to this about certain portions of the ethics law and changing various sections. In the red line copy that you have, some of the first red line or changes are in section 14.14-6 financial disclosure. Many of the changes that are there are really semantics, changing things from must to shall, if you see that. Nothing really of substance other than semantics in that. If you go to 14-6, I guess it's 2I, this has to do with publishing. And I think there was a concern regarding how the list of individuals who did not comply with the requirements that they needed to comply with, how it would be published. So instead of publishing it, the red line would show that it would be presented to the town board in writing as opposed to being published somewhere. I think there was a question as to what that actually meant. So I think we tried to clarify that a list would be given to the town board, and we further tried to clarify what it meant not to be in compliance. And if you see, there's added there, an individual will be considered conditionally in compliance if he or she has filed a complete annual financial disclosure statement but has not included required pages from an income tax return because the tax return filing is on an extension. So I know we added that. Because certain people do get extensions, so I think there was some sort of confusion as to who's technically not in compliance with the law. Apologize. I have too many copies of this here because we weren't sure if you had a copy or not. All right, and then there was also a concern with the penalties and how that would be addressed. So if you go to the last page, which is section 14-3, penalties for offenses, that was changed to if you notice, it said may assess the individual. That would be the Commission on Ethics. So now it's really that they would or shall officially notify the town board. So it would be up to the town board technically to be notified after some sort of hearing, and it would be a recommendation by the Commission on Ethics to the town board of what they believed would be a possible penalty for the offense. And we did, if you notice, we limited it to suspension or termination from service or employment within the town and a civil penalty not to exceed $10,000. But it's officially notifying the town board, because I think there was some sort of confusion. I don't know if it's confusion, but who actually would be assessing some sort of penalty. So we tried to amend that. And the end, it shall be published again by the town clerk at the request of the Commission on Ethics. So
In the
we
official
changed-
newspaper.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a substantial change, because before it was just by the commission. Do you have any questions?
Okay. And Ms. Conklin, since the Ethics Commission doesn't really have a separate budget, I think some of the changes were done to make things more practical, where the town clerk could do the bidding of the Ethics Commission, but the town clerk has the wherewithal to make the publications and do those technical things, which
Correct.
the commission doesn't have a budget to do.
My only
Correct.
concern is that the commission on ethics is the chairman of ethics. Is it going to be a whole board as whole, or the commission recommends the chairman of ethics to go back? It's kind of vague.
I think the intent is that the chairman would represent the commission in presenting a list of those people who may be in violation. So he's the representative of the commission that would come before the board.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak? Come right up.
I didn't see a specific reference to the procedures for responding to complaints from the public. In my experience, and I believe that I had 2 complaints in the past, it literally took months to get a simple acknowledgement that the complaint had been made, and then after several more months, and these were not complex issues, I was given a response from the commission saying that the complaints were not founded on sufficient basis for him, to do anything about it. If you could work into the wording of that document some type of urgency, so that when a complaint is made by a member of the public, that it's addressed at least professionally with an initial response, and then within a reasonable time be offered a judgment. As it stood after the first one, I was convinced that the commission is a mask, that it's not barely functional, and after the second one, I was convinced that my first impressions were correct. So if you could somehow create within that at least the wording that this be dealt with, that public complaints be dealt with professionally. The second thing is, and this is not exactly relevant to the phrasing of the document, but with the spirit of the document addressing so many questions of declarations of disclosure, I just want to remind you once again that the current policy at town for the disclosure or the confidentiality policy that's been imposed on all the workers here, and that all have been forced to sign, and that included not only you're not supposed to talk to anyone about anything that might be, proper only to be discussed within town hall, that there are sanctions that include lawsuits that may follow after we fire you. The wording of that document was told to me by the Department of State's Code Department lawyers That thing as it stands is illegal. Would you go back, revisit the wording of that, and do the public a favor and also your employees a favor so that this doesn't get tested in court? Check with code and see what their lawyers have as their objections to what you have in that document. Thank you.
For the record, Mr. Castelluccio, you state your address.
Yeah, Michael Castelluccio, 19 Pine Brook Road, Chestnut Ridge.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to address us? Okay, motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Mr. Ullman, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers.
They're all volunteers. People have other jobs.
Well, it would, I think that's reasonably applied. You want me to say something?
Yeah, it's a volunteer board.
If there are amendments, we have
You have
to
to wait
adjourn
another
it,
30
and
days.
it has to be on your desk for 7 days before we vote on it. You can do that if you want, but.
I would clarify. I agree with you. No, I think people have to realize it's a volunteer board, and no one's getting paid, and people have other jobs, and they sit and they go through it.
We can leave the public hearing open if you wish and adjourn to the
Maybe
next
we
meeting.
should leave the public hearing open. Maybe we should see about incorporating into this language where the public, complaints by the public can be heard in a professional and timely manner, a reasonable or timely manner. That amendment would mean we'll leave this public hearing open, and we would, wanted to put that amendment in, we'd have 7 days to put it before the board. They'd have to have that local law for 7 days, and we could pass it at the,
And we would
at the next
renotice it if that's what the board wishes. Again, if the board, I think, maybe wishes to discuss this at a workshop where we can spend more time on it, that's certainly appropriate. I point out, I believe it's implied that the Commissioner of Ethics would act within a reasonable amount of time and certainly act professionally, but we can clarify the language if that's what the board would,
and
pleasure
since
is.
someone at the public hearing brought it up, Mr. Castelluccio, in fact, I don't think it's a, request that is out of the ordinary. And although it may be implied in there, to have it specifically stated that that is one of the goals, I think, would be, so we do have the chairman of the ethics board here, and so he raised his hand. Yes.
I would just ask that maybe the board take into consideration requesting counsel, what Mr. Castelluccio requested. Maybe we do reach out to counsel up in Board of Codes and discuss some of the issues that Mr. Castelluccio has brought up in the public hearing.
Yeah, he's referencing a different law, not
Right.
the one we're
Okay.
considering. He's
But
talking about the
even so,
confidentiality.
we could,
Okay.
we reach out and just to show fairness that we're reaching out to Albany and asking them to give us an opinion based on what Mr. Castelluccio has brought to our attention.
Mr. Weinberger, the chairman
Yes,
of
good
the
evening.
ethics-
I wasn't going to make any presentation, but I do want to respond to the comments that were made by the previous gentleman. Two things. Number one, I think it's very important that on your website, you show that there is an ethics commission. There is no indication in the Town of Ramapo website that there is any such entity as a ethics commission, and that should be on your website, among other things. In response to the criticism, frankly, I've been the chairman for the past 5 years at a minimum, and I don't recall receiving any complaint from that gentleman that needs to be processed. But I will tell you what the process is if a complaint comes in. When a complaint comes in about the ethics of a particular personality who is subject to the Ethics Commission, a copy of that complaint is transmitted by our town clerk to that individual to respond in writing to the commission about the complaint, so that that person sees the nature of the complaint being made about that person and gives a written response to us. We then review the complaint and the written response, and if there are legal issues, we consult with our attorney, and then we make a determination as to whether or not there was or was not a violation in any way, and if necessary, we would hold an evidentiary hearing. That has not happened in the time that I've been the chairman. In fact, in the time that I've been a chairman, we received just one written complaint, which we addressed properly. We transmitted it to, and the complaint, by the way, I think was against the entire town board, if you recall. And the town attorney responded on behalf of the town board to the complaint, and then the Ethics Commission determined that there was no violation. And we then notified the complaining party of the determination of the Ethics Commission, and if a party is not satisfied with the determination of the Ethics Commission, then they have at least the opportunity to present the matter to the Supreme Court. And then they would have to show that we were not diligent, we did not do our function properly to get the court involved. That has not happened in the past 5 years, so I don't recall when this gentleman's complaint was made, but it was not made during the period that I've been chairman, so I know nothing about it.
Okay, as the chairman, and as the council said, it's implicit within the law, but would you have any problem with us inserting that the public complaints will be dealt with in a professional and timely manner?
I don't think you should have that. That should be inherent in the function of the commission. I don't think you should have any verbiage that deals with a time basis, because then you open up a can of worms if we're not functioning expeditiously enough. By whose standard? So if your words don't have legal meaning, don't use it. What do you call it? Imply that we are doing our function properly, and that until you see that there is something that needs to be addressed, and I don't think that needs to be addressed, quite honestly. And we do meet promptly. We respond to the disclosure requirements. The people who do not file papers in a proper fashion are notified expeditiously to amend their disclosure statements. So we've acted very, very expeditiously on any matter that's come before us in the time that I've been chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anita, did you want to address that?
Well, I listened to what Mr. Weinberger said, and I do agree with him, because he is the chairperson, and he said he didn't receive a complaint, so maybe this person who was here went through the wrong channel to file some sort of complaint. I'm not sure. However, I think putting the wording in, I agree with Michael Klein that it's implicit in there that they're doing their job, and I do think you would be opening up a can of worms, and I do think that Mr. Weinberger would know if any complaints came in, and he's pretty much on top of things, that I know from having talking to him.
Or
So
perhaps it came in earlier before his time on the...
it might have, but in the time that I know that I've been working with him, I know he's very diligent, and he's always on top of us and emailing us, and and I know he reports anyone who hasn't filed himself. He's pretty much on that. I just think it's implicit in it, and that they are doing their job. And
Okay.
I just want to, Anita, you and I come from the law enforcement field, and as a supervisor, as a former police officer, we don't rush investigations based on because someone wants it in a timely manner. We would love to do everything in a timely manner, but sometimes things do take time to investigate, to get the proper people in a room to look at things and to investigate everything as a whole. So although I do believe Mr. Castellucci didn't really mean it in a harm's way.
no, I don't think he did.
But
I
understand.
think as a legal thing, I
But
just
as a
think
legal
it's
point of view,
implicit in it.
you want to rush things to just because you want a decision, and because that decision might be the wrong decision because you're missing a few facts. And I want to bring up to Mr. Mr. Ullman brought it up before, is that the chairman of the ethics is here on his own time.
The whole commission is
The whole
volunteer.
commission is 100%. A not-for-pay type of issue, and I want to commend them for doing their civic duty, but I do believe Mr. Castellucci wasn't really meeting in your time, Mr. Weinberg. It was something that was made earlier than you, and there was no harm meant towards you or any foul. So,
Okay, I know Mr. Castellucci wants to say. You want to, you can expound on it if you want, sure. Yeah. And Chris, did you want to say something to me first?
Yeah, I would just say that
And then
I
you can
could
speak.
be authorized to at least acknowledge receipt of a complaint, before the commission meets, and at least, acknowledge to the complainer that, we are in receipt of it, it will be processed when the commission convenes.
Okay. Michael, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say, and I think Mr. Sampson could do that without an amendment to the law. That would just be a procedure that would be followed.
Okay.
As to the timing of my complaints, this happened quite a while ago, and as you all know, I've been at this for 12 years. And my experience, and I can tell you, and if you would like the documents, I'll bring them in. My experience was no response for several months, and then once I was notified that the matter had been taken up, several more months followed. If you want me to document that, I can. Now, if that's been changed with a new individual, great. I don't see, I find it very odd that you're asking in creating a public policy, you're asking the public with the statements that were made, you can trust us. You can trust us that we're going to do this expeditiously, and because of that implied trust, we don't have to put that in the document. A person who is making an ethics complaint begins with from the base of lack of trust. Would you agree? Then why not reassure that person with the policy that we're going to address this, we're going to acknowledge that you've made this complaint, and if that's what's in place now, great.
And I think you make a good point, and I think that by having the town clerk as the gateway to the public, to be able to acknowledge to that person making the complaint the timeliness of it and then passing it along.
If you take that situation,
Yeah.
the town clerk does not have to put in any of his documents the policy that, well, will respond within a reasonable amount of time, because the state has already done that. The state addressing this kind of situation said, you have 10 days. You have 10 days to acknowledge, and at that time, if you're going to have difficulty, what you do is you tell the person who is asking for the information, who is foiling, that this is going to take a little longer. We expect to be able to have this for you in a couple of weeks. It may take a month, whatever. That discussion has begun after 10 days. And the reason that the state put that in there is because they're dealing with a situation where you want to make things work as smoothly as possible. Now, I don't believe there is a public policy stated here at the town of Ramapo that within a certain period of time, you will receive response from us that this has begun. You don't have to do that because the state has done that, and it's been the policy for, as far as I know, with the foiling process for decades.
Okay.
It's not bad wisdom to follow in this situation here.
Okay, so with that in mind, then we don't need to have an amendment. We will utilize this process with the town clerk. So on the main motion,
Oh, we need to close the public hearing.
close the public hearing
Coleman.
by Councilman Ullman, second by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. On the main motion, moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Next we have on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes for the regular meeting of March 19th. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item 1B is the regular minutes adoption for the meeting of June 10th. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item number 2 on the agenda is our Town Attorney, Michael Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The first two resolutions involve the approval of agreements. The first of these is extending an existing agreement with our vending company, which has since sold or merged its business. So the resolution acknowledges the assignment of our contract to the new entity and extends that contract under the same terms and conditions for 1 additional year.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next resolution is to approve an intermunicipal agreement between the town of Ramapo and the Ramapo Central School District. East Ramapo Central School District, thank you. This is for the town's use of the Summit Park School for a camp program, and in lieu of paying rent for that, the town has agreed to perform, through its highway department, repairs to certain parking lots that the school district owns.
So that's the intermunicipal agreement.
That's correct.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. I also note that also at this school that we will be utilizing, Summer Park School, we will now be utilizing extending that to the village of Spring Valley. They do not have their program this year for their kids. They have about 75 kids, so they'll be coming in, and they'll be paying or receiving whatever scholarships that we have set up already in our Parks Department for people according to their ability to pay. So that will really fill up that program and will be a great utilization this summer. Okay?
Okay. The next resolution approves a proposal submitted by Trayron Electrical Contractors for the installation of new lighting in the Town Hall parking lot. A portion of that will be paid by a O&R rebate.
I think it's like 5,200 or 5,200.
Yeah, so it's about 25% of it will be paid by the grant.
Okay, moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
We've received a proposal by Ira Wicks Arborist for tree work on town park facilities. This has been recommended by our Director of Parks and Recreation, Michelle Antosca.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
The town has had a number of meetings and has begun the process of a sidewalk installation project on Route 306. We have now received an agreement with Mazer Consulting for design services for that project, and this resolution approves that agreement with Mazer.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. And this is, the funds for this are, we received from a grant from the federal government of almost $2 million.
That's correct. Now, the next two resolutions approve settlement of claims. Both of these involve damage to town vehicles, so the town is being reimbursed for the damage to our vehicles from those persons who caused the damage. The first of these is a claim, and it's a Marcus Saig, S-A-I-G, who, through his insurance company, will be paying the town for this.
That's $633.10. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
The next claim is through Allstate Insurance Company on behalf of its insured, Ms. Mencher. This is for $822.60.
That is moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
We have two tax assure settlements on the agenda this evening. Sorry. The first of these is property owned by William Sickle. This is for tax years 2010 through 2015. As a consequence of this tax assure settlement, the town will be required to refund $632.34 to the landowner.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
The next resolution, the property owner is Congregation Kahal Torah Chaim. This covers one tax year and grants a partial exemption to 5 different properties, which are itemized on the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
The 2E on the agenda, this is a corrective resolution. The town board passed Resolution 294 of 2015, but the subject matter of that resolution had actually been included in a prior resolution. So this simply rescinds the last resolution that was adopted.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
We have a pending PERB matter with one of our police officers involving reimbursement for college credits. This resolution approves a memorandum of understanding with the PBA whereby we will be reimbursing the officer for those course credits which have been deemed relevant for police work, and this is a non-precedential setting agreement.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
The County of Rockland has contacted the town of Ramapo and has indicated it will be going forward with the construction of a park and ride in Muncie off Saddle River Road and Route 59. The county will be constructing the park and ride. It will then be giving the park and ride to the town of Ramapo to operate and maintain, and it will be paying the town of Ramapo an annual fee for doing so. What the county has asked for is that the town indicate that since this is a multi-municipal project, that it not be subject to the normal requirements for construction in the town of Ramapo, meaning planning board approval, payment of fees. This resolution accepts that request of the County of Rockland, subject, however, to our Town Department of Public Works engineers reviewing and approving the plans.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
I think we're on to personnel next.
Oh, personnel. Okay, I'll do the personnel. This is to accept the resignation of Aaron Trudler as the Assistant Town Attorney. And moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. It's carried unanimously, and we'll send a letter thanking him for all of his work. He and his family are moving to Philadelphia. His wife has received a new employment as the head of a new school, and we're going to miss him dearly, and we will send a letter to him thanking him for his service.
Yeah, on a personal note, he was a valued employee in my department in the town attorney's office. He had different experiences than many of the other attorneys there, and he coalesced very well with the rest of the staff, and he'll be missed.
Absolutely. Did we voted on that?
Not sure. I'm sorry, yes, we did.
Okay. Yes.
On the personnel,
Yes.
it's not on the agenda, but we've had a member of the Ethics Commission resign.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was someone that has to be a teacher. And we, as Deputy Supervisor and I, have reached out to a person, and we hope to
We
be
reached out to a few people that are teachers, so, yeah.
a teacher that's in Sloatsburg. Yes,
I'm hoping to have
absolutely.
that. Mr. Supervisor, I apologize, I should have brought that up during the time he spoke, Mr. Chairman. I will have that situated by next board meeting.
Okay, we'll have that for the next board meeting. Okay, the next is the authorization for the assessor to attend the New York State SAA seminar in Ellenville, New York, October 4th and 7th. Moved by?
Mr. Withers?
Seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. This is approval of a license agreement for Ramapo Cultural Arts Center concession stand. Moved by
Withers?
Councilman Ullman, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. That was
have-
Papa John's, right?
1 year.
That's correct.
One-year contract.
We have a one additional item on the agenda tonight. We had a request from a landowner who was forced to relocate, at the town's request, a drainage easement incident to a development. As a consequence, the design of his development planned for a stairway to be in a certain location. It would be a hardship to move that. So he's asked permission that a portion of the stairway be within our easement. This has been reviewed by our building inspector and our Department of Public Works, and they don't see a problem with granting the request under these unusual circumstances.
And
So
also,
this,
Michael, to clarify, it's
Yep.
not in the 5-foot easement, it's the town requested 15 feet, and this is in the, between the 10 and the 15 feet, not in the 5 feet.
so this grants permission for the stairwell to be in part of our drainage easement, and it has those conditions which are itemized in the resolution to do so.
Okay, moved by Councilman Ullman, second by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Okay. Is that all that you have, Counsel?
That is.
Okay, so now at this time, we'll have the public participation. Anybody in the public would like, Mr. Romanowski, come right up.
Before we go to public participation, Mr. Supervisor and Councilman Ullman, I would just recognize a great businessman for over 40 years and a trustee in the Village of Airmont. Mr. Ralph Bracco is here with us, and we also have our former Deputy Supervisor and Councilwoman for over 24 years, Mrs. Hunter, and Commissioner of Deputy Affairs of the Police Department.
Thank you.
Just walked in. Thank you.
Tonight, I would like to ask this board a question. I'm looking...
Introduce yourself. as you-
Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Muncie. I'd like to ask the board a question tonight. Where is Keith Cernak from State Advisors? Supervisor St. Lawrence, when I spoke to you on the radio in February, you stated that you will be bringing him down to make a presentation to the town board of the work product of State Advisors in the end of April. It is now June. Where is he? Can any board member give me an example of the work product of State Advisors that has improved the quality of life for the residents of the town of Ramapo, or has saved the taxpayers of the Ramapo money to justify the $72,000 this company is being paid every year? It seems like Christmas occurs every month for this company, as they receive another $6,000 gift from the town of Ramapo taxpayers every month. Why are State Advisors not lobbying for the East Ramapo Oversight Bill, which would improve the quality of life for the students of the East Ramapo School District and their families by giving them the quality education that they so rightfully deserve to receive, to become contributing members of society, instead of being deprived of resources as they currently are? In 2013, State Advisors was paid $60,000. In 2014, they were paid $60,000. And in 2015, they will be paid $72,000, a total of $192,000. For what? Could someone please explain the cost effectiveness of this company? And could someone please tell the truth as to when Keith Cernak will be brought in to make a presentation to the town board and the residents of the town of Ramapo of the work product of this company? Or is it that he's not being brought in because this company has no work product to present for the last 3 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. Anyone else who would like to speak in public participation? Mr. Castelluccio?
Just as a footnote for what Mr. Romanowski just talked about, I foiled the work product of that individual, and what I got in return was about 8 or 9 pages, every single line redacted as to what projects he was working on what work product he was producing, as to whether or not he was going to conferences. I don't know. It was blacked out, every single page. If you guys want to see that, I'll send you a copy of it. We'll be working through an appeal on that, because if all he has done is advise and never appeared in a public conference and never produced a public document, you are overpaying him at one absurd level. The stuff that can legally be redacted from what he does are the private conversations when he is advising this group or the supervisor or with whomever he is working. But as far as public documents that he creates, communiques that he creates, those are all foilable, and those have been blacked out. The information is being hidden from the public right now. And as this goes on, it gets more and more suspicious. And if you know how I operate, this has been shared with a number of agencies already, including the salaries. I don't know if I missed the public session that was supposed to take place with the Planet Aid contract. Is that still viable? Is that still?
No, Oh,
The Planet Aid, that is the.
The cubicles, the,
no.
No, I think we've
We've
canceled that.
We've canceled
canceled
those. And the supervisors tasked me to be on top of it. I've reached out to the Attorney General's office. I am working on it.
okay,
And I'm
if,
actually working
And
with
we're
Ms.
asking
And I'm
them to
actually,
remove those.
and I'm actually working with Mr. Bob Burton and some of the chiefs of the Hillcrest Fire Department. So
Yeah.
they know that I'm working hard with it at the request of the supervisor and the town attorney's office and the rest of the board. So.
I would have hoped that there had been a little more research at the front end of setting all of this up, or, you know, beginning the talks, because this group is notorious. These people have been, they were given an F grading by the AIP, that's the American Institute of Philanthropy, when the Better Business Bureau was apprised of what they were doing in Maine and Massachusetts.
They're also in
The
Pennsylvania.
The Better Business Bureau would not even allow them to be listed as a charity, and they're connected out to a larger international conglomerate, the president of which, Morgans Peterson, was arrested in California, extradited to Denmark, and he bolted from that point from those charges. I imagine you're
No, but
apprised of that by now.
it-
If you do your homework to begin with, you won't even get started on something like that. This was a simple internet search.
No, I understand, but it also goes back to your point where things can't be done within a 10-day period. There's a lot of things that have to be done.
This took me 5 minutes.
Mr. Castellucci, I'm aware of that. I've made 400 arrests within my career. But I'm just telling you, there's a lot more that goes to that, and we're reached out to the Attorney General's office, and
Okay.
Chief Gary Wren and also Bob Burton are I'm working well with them, along with the supervisor, and we're understanding this group, and we have letters from our town attorney's office to ask them to expeditiously get their stuff off our property. So
Their history is they're very hard to get rid of also.
Well, we're on top.
Yeah.
If
Thank
they
you.
don't, then the templates will come and take them for salvage, and
But
they will be gone.
Well, we are on top of it. Thank you.
Okay, motion to close, Mr. Bracco.
Good evening, Board. Ralph Bracco, 30 New County Road, Village of Airmont. I understand there's been a lot of money allocated from the governor for roads. I hear about a lot of roads being done on 306 and all. Route 59 is in the Village of Airmont and the town of Ramapo. We did it last year from Airmont Road up until Cherry Lane. The road is terrible. The road is disgusting. I think we should really address that immediately. I know I spoke to the state, I think the lady's name was, what's her name? Upstate with Phil Tisi, but the point I'm saying is the road is disgusting, and people complain constantly. It's a big corridor. We got 520 businesses here. I think we should really address that issue really as soon as possible. I mean, I know it's in the Village of Airmont. I know the town takes care of the roads with the plowing and all, but it should be done really from Airmont Road up until Remsen Avenue, right before the bridge, because if you look, it's very bad. The center and all, coming out of Bates and Horton, it's terrible there, and I don't want to see a
agree,
fatality.
and we did
there.
have them address the bridge itself over the thruway.
That was done.
Which is held up, which was horrendous. And we have asked the state to continue on all of the 59 sections in the town, but we will have the superintendent of highways
And my
ask
last
again.
thing, I
Yes.
spoke to Herb Reisman when he was alive many, many years ago. What's the chance, you talk about sidewalks, of putting sidewalks from Airmont Road all the way up to Remsen on both sides. It's a big commercial corridor, people would love to walk up and down. I think it's really important. I mean, we don't have the money in the village, and it's a
But I
state.
want you to know, we put it on our map, on our federal map, and the village wouldn't be able to get any funding unless it was on our map, and it is on our map as areas that we've set as priorities that should be done.
But they
So
pick.
that will help.
We give them a map of 40 blocks and they pick. It's not up to us. They pick which blocks they want to put on.
But we do have that on the list.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, anyone else? Motion to close public participation, moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. A motion to adjourn,
Withers?
moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. We're adjourned.